Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It is Saturday, the 28th of December. A few more days and we'll be into 2025, right? So, what are we going to be talking about today? Now, you didn't think you get off easy with just yesterday of store etiquette, and how you should be doing things. I want to take a deeper dive, which I think is more important, and that is the way we're brought up and the way we're bringing up our kids. So, stay tuned. Alrighty, welcome back to the channel, and yes, this is the weekend where I go off the rail. And my name is Eric, if you didn't know it. But what are we talking about today? I'm talking about when you're a kid, the expectations, when you're a parent, the responsibilities, and when you're a grandparent, you can enjoy stories and also helping teach and shape your grandkids because they do look up to you. So let's start with the first kids. Proper etiquette is you don't talk back to your elders. You respect your elders. Anybody older than you. Now, if there's somebody a couple of years older than you that's asinine in town, of course you're not going to respect them. And for good reason, right? Or the parents of a child that is abusive or something like that. You still have to somewhat respect them, but you stay clear of them. But what I'm talking about is the good people. The 98% of the people out there are good, okay? For some reason, the 2% takes up all the time on TV, right? But 98% of the people out there are good. And we've lost that generational thing of teaching our kids that a good hard day's work gets you paid, right? And even when I was younger, and both my parents had passed, and I lived with my grandparents, there was always a lesson there. There was always a lesson there. And that was from simply you have chores. Keep your room clean, help out with the chores in the kitchen, and your job is to mow the yard every week. And in the wintertime, shovel the step and the sidewalk out to the road. And for that, I was given an allowance. See, I was being taught, whether I wanted to know it or not, was if you want something, you have to work for it. We're not just going to hand it to you. And let me tell you, my grandparents weren't filthy rich, but they also weren't poor. And they could have easily afforded my allowance and not have me do squat. But they didn't. They knew that they needed to raise me right with values, respecting my elders, and knowing that if there was things that I wanted in life, you had to work for it. And that taught me a valuable lesson because there were things that I wanted that I couldn't afford that pushed me to do other things to get money. And by the time I was 13, I had 5 yards in town that I was mowing with a push mower. And they were paying me $5 per yard, right? And if you're older like me, you'll remember these days the Montgomery Ward's catalog coming, especially the one in the fall before Christmas. Because I had this whole section on just toys, right? And I can remember wasting hours laying on the shag carpet in the living room while my grandparents were watching Hee Haw or something like that, or the evening news, with Walter Cronkite. See, we only had 3 channels. Those were the days. You either had Channel 7 or there were 2 Canadian channels that we could watch. But I would lay there for hours circling things that I wanted out of that catalog. It was neat. And back then, you could actually order a boat, motor, and trailer. Yeah, I mean, you had to pay the fees to get it here. But you could buy all 3 of those for like $400. Try buying that now. And they had BB guns assortments in Montgomery Wards. And they also had firearms. Deer rifles, 22s. And we never had issues with school shootings and everything else. We were raised right. Parents took time with their kids. And to me, I feel like that's the biggest thing that's going on these days. And it's not to blame parents. It's to blame the way society went in saying, okay, you both have to work, both parents have to work in order to support yourself. So if both are working, neither one of them have time for the kids. So the kids are kind of left out there in left field. And what I can say is, if you really, really wanted to be able to stay home and raise your kids, one of you could. Just get rid of the second car, get rid of the extras. You could still do it, but it would be, a penny pincher. But what you're finding now is a lot of parents are homeschooling. And they're not homeschooling because they're scared that their child, something will happen to them in school. They know that their child will not get the education that they can provide at home one-on-one. Now, I was lucky in that my graduating class, I think, was 19. And the size of the classrooms that we attended classes for social studies, English, math, you name it, was around 20 to 25, depending upon, you had some seniors that had to take, the courses that I was taking, because, back then you had BOCES was for the tech side, and then you had the other students like me, that parents and grandparents decided that we wanted our child to have a Regents diploma and go on to college. I was pissed. I wanted to go to BOCES. But what I'm leading up to is all the way up through my childhood. If I would talk back to my grandmother, my grandfather, I'd have been picking myself up off the floor. People weren't afraid to spank their kids. And I'm not talking abusive. I'm talking about a good swift kick in the ass, or, a brush, or a brush. What do they call them? The willows? That's my grandmother always used to threaten. She was going to go out and get a willow branch. She never did. But the threat was enough. And then the secondary threat was, wait till I tell your grandfather. Because with Graham, you couldn't say anything that would get much of a reaction. But the biggest thing you didn't want to do is have your grandfather, you didn't want to let your grandfather down. That was a biggie for me. Gramp was a pillar of the community. Gramp, he was 6'4". They called him the judge. And we went to Sunday school when we were younger. And then to church every Sunday at 11. We were Methodist, still am. Except for now, as I'm older, I believe that the church is there for community function to bring you into the community. Whereas, if you want to talk to God, you don't need a middleman. You could talk to him anytime you want. I talk to him quite often. And usually I get answers. Not always, but usually. But what's going on this last couple generations? We've had this motto in our head. We want our kids to have it better than we had. And I can tell you right now, my upbringing wasn't that bad looking back on it. It was pretty damn good. I mean, I lost my mom when I was 10. My father when I was going on, actually I just turned 12. Because we buried him on my birthday. And I consider myself blessed that my grandparents, bless their hearts, were able to take me in and raise me as their own child, not grandchild, their child. You know, it was grandma and grandpa. Don't get me wrong. But they raised me just like they had raised mom. The same values. Respect other people. Treat people the way you would hope to be treated. As I said yesterday, it's better to keep your mouth shut and have people think you're stupid than open it and just confirm it. And my grandfather always said when it came to swearing, because if you're around me, you'll notice I don't swear. But I got it drilled into me because I swore when I was young, and this is how I ended up with it. Said it shows ignorance if you can't find a better word than those swear words. Shows ignorance. Shows that you're an ignorant person. Because, I get after my son. Every other word out of his mouth is a swear word. And what really bothers me is he says it in front of his younger kids. One's in second grade, and the other one will be going to school here in the next year or two. And then he wonders why they say a few swear words. They're parroting you. They're listening. They're watching. And they're just mouthing what you're saying. But we decided we wanted our kids to have it better than what we had it. And that meant bigger Christmases, less responsibility. But my kids, at least, we had the dairy farm. And both of my kids had chores. Feeding calves, cleaning out calves, what have you. So they weren't totally, where they had no responsibility. Because they did. I'll be honest with you. And let me tell you, they both turned out great. But now we've gone through another generation. And they're talking and thinking the same thing I did. And they're trying to have it so that their kids don't have to go through what they went through. And they had it pretty good. But now the kids have got less responsibility, less respect for their elders, can say and do whatever the hell they want. And then we all wonder why there's a problem. Where is the gap? And great-grandparents and grandparents are horrified by what the kids are saying, the grandkids and the great-grandkids. Like there's no filter. Like we needed 100 grams to tell these kids, you're just showing ignorance by swearing all the time. What do you mean you talk back to your mom? See, there's a difference between revolting when you're 14, 15, and 16, right? Sometimes 17. Because we all start to, that's that point where we start to think like we know it all. Yeah. Somebody tries to tell you something, you're like, I already know that. And more. You don't know squat. Honest to God, I didn't know squat. I don't know squat now. I have learned a lot, but there's so much more to learn. So in a way, I consider myself ignorant on many topics, on many levels. So what has to take place? Well, we need proper etiquette to come back into place. And I don't know if it's being taught now, but, we had shop and home ec in school. And that'll get me off on a tangent here. That I can remember with home ec, most guys signed up for shop, right? But I found out the whole class of home ec was girls. What better way to be around girls than sign up for home ec? And I turned out to be one of the best bakers. I had a blast, and the girls had a blast. And it wasn't anything, of trying to be girlfriend, boyfriend. None of that. We were friends. We had a blast. I can remember just covered from head to toe with flour. And the teacher was a riot. Because she laughed when she found out I walked into her class. And she said, Eric, what are you doing here? I said, I'm supposed to be taking this class. And she said, guys, just don't take this class. Well, I did. But if you're younger and you have kids to home, now is the time to corner them. If they're swearing like a drunken sailor, give them instead of people thinking you're stupid, by using those words, you just proved it. You just showed your ignorance. And you want to always teach your kids to respect their mom and their grandparents and most elders out there. Okay? Now, one of the things that parents fear everything today. I mean, my grandparents, especially on a weekend, at daylight, I would take off with my fish pole, and I wouldn't be seen till noon when the fire whistle went off and it was lunchtime. So I'd come back and have lunch, right? And I would disappear again with my fish pole until 5 o'clock when the whistle went off again, and that was dinner time. And a lot of times we'd get together after dinner, after we helped get the dishes washed and stuff, and get together as groups of friends on the block because I lived in town. And we'd have like football games or baseball games, but using a softball or, was it Nerf? I think it was. And we also had the plastic balls that had the holes in it. And we would have a blast with all of our friends and neighbors, kids. We would get together and entertain ourselves till dark. Until you start hearing parents hollering off their front porch, time to come in for the night. Most parents these days don't want their child out of their sight because of their anxiety level. Because they're being shown on TV all the time, kidnapping, pedophiles, you name it. You name it. So why wouldn't you parents, you younger people, not be a little on the worried side? Because the chances of coming into contact with one of those are pretty slim. And you want your child to be able to have that ability to make friends with other people. And that starts with not having them fear other people. You're teaching them to fear other people. And what are they going to teach their child? 10 times worse. 10 times worse. So etiquette is not only dealing with the shop, but it's also dealing with the home life and raising our kids right. And for my grandparents, wanting me to learn valuable lessons that I instilled in my kids when they were growing up. Nobody is going to bail you out. You need to earn your own money if there's things you want in life. You need to respect your elders. And don't ever let me catch you talking back to your mom, no matter how old you are. So on that note, you guys have a great Saturday. Put in the comments what you guys, when you were younger, the Montgomery Ward's catalog and the circling, and what were things that you did? We used to get popcorn on the weekends. I remember Saturday night, we watched Lawrence Welk, Hee Haw, and then Gunsmoke. I mean, that was a great night. And then on Sundays, I would lay in bed because Ma and Pa Kettle would show up on PBS. And that was what is it? But it was great. Ma and Pa Kettle, if you've never been around or heard of them, Google them or go on to YouTube. Or they were right. I would laugh for hours watching them. All right, you guys have a great Saturday.